Canada didn't stage protests. They didn't hold press conferences or threaten retaliation. They didn't storm social media or call emergency trade meetings. They just stopped buying. Quietly. Deliberately. And now, in 2025, entire US industries are breaking down from the inside. It started when President Trump reignited his America First economic agenda, hammering Canada with punishing tariffs on lumber, energy, auto parts, and agriculture. Washington cheered. Analysts called it bold. Headlines framed it as a comeback moment for US dominance. But Canada? Canada went quiet. Not with anger, but with action. No warning. No headlines. Just a powerful silence that spoke louder than any threat. Canadian households began turning away from American goods. They swapped out US groceries, skipped Disney vacations, cut ties with Netflix, and rejected Amazon's convenience. It didn't feel like a boycott. It felt like a breakup. A cold, calculated decision to walk away. Not out of rage, but out of principle. And now, that quiet decision is creating chaos. Factories are going dark in Illinois. Motorcycle shops are shutting down in Wisconsin. Truck inventories are piling up in Michigan. And farmers in the South are watching their exports rot in warehouses. This isn't some loud political standoff. It's a slow, suffocating collapse of trust between neighbors. And here's the most shocking part. Washington isn't reacting. They're too distracted, too proud, too blind to see what's really happening. Because if even Canada, the US's closest ally, its friendliest trade partner, is done doing business with us, what does that say to the rest of the world? In today's video, we're revealing the 6 US products that Canada just cut off, and the US states now reeling from the fallout. Don't scroll away. Tap like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Because the media's not talking about it. Let's dive in. Number 1. Peanut butter. It might sound trivial, like a snack aisle afterthought, but in 2025, peanut butter became Canada's unlikely frontline of economic protest. Not because of cost. Not because of shortages. But because of something deeper. Resentment. For decades, American brands like Jif and Skippy were household staples across the country. Lunchboxes, breakfast tables, late-night snacks, they were everywhere. But this year, they're vanishing. According to a report from Retail Metrics North, US-made peanut butter sales dropped by over 36% in a single quarter. That's not a dip. That's an exodus. Shelves in major Canadian chains, Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro, are now lined with brands like Nuts to You, Kraft Canada, and All Good Natural. Canadian spreads are booming. And this shift isn't because they taste better. It's because they feel better. As one shopper in Vancouver put it, it's not about peanut butter, it's about not rewarding a country that's punishing us. The movement has gone viral. Instagram and TikTok are filled with Canadian moms doing taste tests. Kids holding signs that say, "No Jif, no joke." Even schools are sending newsletters asking parents to support domestic snack brands. What used to be a background product is now a symbol of defiance. And the impact? Massive. In Georgia and Texas, processors are slowing production. Warehouses are overstocked. Exports have stalled. What was once a high-volume, low-maintenance export has become a logistical nightmare. And for US producers, it's a loud message. Even your smallest exports aren't safe anymore. Canada didn't scream. They didn't post angry hashtags. They just stopped buying. And all it took was a sandwich. Number 2. HarleyDavidson. Once a rolling icon of American rebellion, HarleyDavidson was practically worshipped across Canada. For many, it wasn't just a bike. It was an identity. Road trips, parades, biker rallies. Nothing screamed freedom louder than a Harley on Canadian pavement. But in 2025, that roar went silent. After Trump's administration escalated tariffs on Canadian goods, Canada hit back, quietly but strategically, with a 20% import duty on American motorcycles. The result? Immediate collapse. HarleyDavidson sales dropped by over 45% within months. One Calgary dealership closed its doors after 2 decades. Others are slashing prices just to stay afloat. And here's what makes it worse. It's not just about the money. It's about betrayal. Riders who once wore stars and stripes on their leather jackets are now switching allegiance to Triumph, Yamaha, even Royal Enfield. Because loyalty has limits. One longtime rider in Ottawa put it simply, "I didn't change bikes because I wanted to. I changed because I felt insulted." And that cultural shift is devastating the US supply chain. In Wisconsin, plants are running skeleton shifts. In Missouri, parts manufacturers are losing contracts. Harley-Davidson didn't pick this fight, but they're paying for it. A brand once embraced for its loud, unapologetic American identity is now suffering precisely because of that identity. In Canada, freedom of choice now means freedom from Harley-Davidson. Number 3, Amazon. If peanut butter and motorcycles were symbols, Amazon was the infrastructure. It was woven into daily life. From Quebec to British Columbia, Canadians relied on it for convenience, affordability, and access. But in 2025, all that changed, not because Amazon failed, but because it stayed silent. As US-Canada tensions deepened, Amazon refused to address rising tariffs or the wave of anti-American consumer sentiment. And in that silence, Canadians made a decision. They started logging out. The numbers are shocking. Over 120,000 Prime memberships were cancelled in just 90 days. Canadian cross-border orders dropped nearly 40% compared to the same period last year. Amazon's Buy Now button turned into a political statement, and people chose not to click. Facebook groups and Reddit threads have become echo chambers of resistance. Hashtags like #BuyAmazon and #BuyLocale are exploding. Alternative platforms like Well.ca, Indigo, and Canadian Tire's e-com store are seeing record traffic. Even small local businesses are cashing in. A Vancouver bookstore owner recently told the press, "I've had more online orders this month than any time since 2020. People are voting with their wallets, and they're voting Canadian." And behind the scenes in the US, trouble is brewing. Fulfillment centers in Pennsylvania, Texas, and Nevada are reporting excess capacity. Layoffs and hiring freezes are happening, quietly but steadily. Routes that used to prioritize Canada are now being cut or restructured. Amazon, once an untouchable titan, is learning that even convenience has a price. Canada didn't shut down Amazon. They just logged out. And that simple act? It's costing billions. Number 4, Netflix. For over a decade, Netflix wasn't just entertainment, it was part of Canadian culture. From Halifax to Vancouver, families, couples, and college students shared the same experience. Netflix on a Friday night. But in 2025, the red N is becoming a red flag. The backlash didn't begin with a price hike or a content dispute. It began with silence. When Canadian creators were hit with tighter US distribution restrictions and Trump's administration pulled incentives for foreign co-productions, Netflix didn't respond. No adjustments. No partnerships. No advocacy. Just more American content being shoved into Canadian feeds. And the result? Canadians began canceling fast. Within just 2 quarters, Netflix lost over 400,000 Canadian subscribers. And the damage isn't just to subscriptions. It's cultural. As platforms like Crave, CBC Gem, and even Apple TV Canada ramp up local production, viewers are shifting their loyalties. People are choosing shows that reflect their values and their voices, not just a Hollywood formula. And behind the scenes, this shift is gutting parts of Netflix's US infrastructure. In Los Angeles, production schedules tied to Canadian viewership have been slashed. In New York, marketing budgets targeting Toronto and Montreal have been frozen. Canada was never Netflix's biggest market, but it was one of its most stable. Now that reliability is gone. A streaming platform that prided itself on being global is now realizing just how local the consequences of indifference can be. Number 5, Walmart private labels. Walk into any Walmart in Canada, and it's hard not to spot the Great Value logo. From canned goods to cereal, household cleaners to frozen veggies, it's everywhere. Cheap, convenient, and, until recently, trusted. But in 2025, Canadian consumers are putting these products under the microscope. And what they're seeing? US sourcing, US profits, and zero Canadian accountability. It started with a viral TikTok. A Montreal mother posted a side-by-side of Great Value spaghetti and a Canadian alternative, captioned, "One sends profits to Arkansas. The other supports my neighbor." That 15-second clip lit a fire. Now, grocery influencers, nutritionists, even teachers are encouraging Canadian families to ditch US-branded generics. The movement isn't just emotional, it's economic. University of Guelph's Food Institute reports a 29% drop in sales of US private labels in Canadian stores over 6 months. And Walmart? They're scrambling. They're trying to source more Canadian alternatives. They're disguising product origins. But the damage is done. For producers in Arkansas, Illinois, and Ohio, where Walmart's private label food manufacturing is concentrated, the losses are piling up. Plants are reducing shifts. Packaging orders have stalled. Trucking schedules are being rewritten. This isn't about brand loyalty anymore. It's about national values. Canadians aren't just buying food, they're making a statement. And the companies that didn't see it coming are now choking on their own great value. Number 6. Ford and GM. For nearly a century, Canadian driveways were dominated by two badges, the Ford Blue Oval and the General Motors bow tie. These weren't just cars, they were symbols of trust, power, and neighborly industry. But after Trump's tariffs made Canadian auto parts more expensive and laid-off Ontario workers became a political afterthought, something changed. Canadians began turning away. Not with protests. Not with angry billboards. Just with cold, hard market choices. In 2025, Toyota, Hyundai, and Volkswagen are seeing record Canadian sales. Meanwhile, Ford and GM are watching their numbers tank, down 28% year-over-year in Canada. And the blow isn't limited to dealers in Toronto or Vancouver. It's echoing back into Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky. Plants that once relied on steady Canadian demand are now running under capacity. Worker hours are shrinking. Contracts with Canadian suppliers are dissolving. And the worst part? Washington doesn't seem to care. For decades, Canada was the quiet, dependable market. A neighbor that bought American out of habit. But not anymore. Now, Canadians are choosing efficiency, affordability, and political neutrality over sentimental brands. One auto journalist in Calgary put it bluntly, "We grew up thinking a Ford was a given. Now it's an afterthought." And for an industry already struggling with electric transition costs, this drop in Canadian sales is a gut punch. The border used to be a bridge. Now it's a barrier. These 6 products tell a deeper story, one not about price or policy, but about pride. Canada didn't start a trade war. They didn't retaliate with tariffs or threats. They just quietly walked away. And the American industries left behind? They're starting to realize silence can be the loudest protest of all. America didn't hear the goodbye because Canada never said it. They just quietly turned off the tap. From breakfast tables to billion-dollar brands, their exit is rewriting trade history. If they've had enough, others will follow. Hit like, subscribe, and tell us who walks away next. This isn't over.